सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। शुचौ देशे प्रतिष्ठाय स्थिरमासनमात्मनः नात्युश्चितं नातिनीचं चैलाजिनकुशोत्तरम् तत्रैकाग्रं मनः कृत्वा यतचित्तेन्द्रियक्रियः उपविश्यासने युञ्जात् योगमात्मविशुद्धये समं कायशिरो ग्रीवं धारयन्नचलं स्थिरः सम्प्रेक्ष्य नासिकाग्रं स्वं दिशश्चानवलोकयन् प्रशान्तात्मा विगतभीः ब्रह्मचारिव्रते स्थितः मनः संयम्य मच्चित्तः युक्त आसीत मत्परः युञ्जन्नेवं सदात्मानं योगी नियतमानसः शान्तिं निर्वाणपरमां मत्स्थं स्थामधिगच्छति नात्यश्नतस्तु योगोऽस्ति न चैकान्तमनश्नतः न चातिस्वप्नशीलस्य जाग्रतो चैव चार्जुन युक्ताहारविहारस्य युक्तचेष्टस्य कर्मसु युक्तस्वप्नावबोधस्य योगो भवति दुःखः यदा विनियतं चित्तम् आत्मन्येवावतिष्ठते निःस्पृहः सर्वकामेभ्यः युक्त इत्युच्यते तदा यथा दीपो निवातस्थः नेङ्गते सोपमा स्मृता योगिनो यतचित्तस्य युञ्जतो योगमात्मनः यत्रो परमते चित्तं निरुद्धं योगसेवया यत्र चैवात्मनात्मानं पश्यन्नात्मनि तुष्यति। हरि ओम नमस्कार। The last we did was the 14th verse. Shantatma Vigatabhihi, serene-minded, fearless, Brahmachari Vrate Sthitah, firm in the vow of Brahmacharya, celibacy. Manah Sanyamya Machittah, having controlled the mind, machitta, thinking of me, yukta asita matparaha, seeking union, let him sit, seeking union with me as the Supreme, matparaha. The little music that you heard just before the class, you heard today of the great classical musicians, the great Madhura Mani Iyer. In the song today, Sita Pate Na Manusuna, an outstanding composition for the great, I think it's a great Tyagaraja Kirtana. It is the height of music. It is the pinnacle of music is the Carnatic music. It is classical music. So you need to have your emotion tuned into the very high degree to be able to appreciate Carnatic music. Here is a classical literature. You need to have your intellect tuned in to the highest point to be able to appreciate the classical literature. When you have a classical mind and a classical intellect, you will live a classical life. You will live a very high standard. So you need to have that aptitude to be able to appreciate the deeper import of whether be it music or the wisdom. You need the receptacles. So some of you may not be in tune with this music, and some of you are so knowledgeable. You all have professionals, some of you. But it is just an attempt to tune in your mind. So I would actually appeal to you all, come in 10, 15 minutes early, 11:15 sharp. The bhajan start 10, 15 minutes, helps you to unwind your mind and intellect, which are caught up in the worldly transactions, where it only arouses worldly emotions, it arouses worldly thoughts. So your mind and intellect is caught up in the worldly transactions. So just give yourself that little buffer, a time where you mellow down, you calm your mind, you quieten the mind. Any thoughts that are bothering you, you just push it aside. You're able to subdue. That's a preparatory ground. And 15 minutes is a long time to unsettle the mind and intellect. And when we start the invocation, you are so in tune, you're so charged into this atmosphere, into this little time we spent. When you just walk in from another experience into this experience, there is a shift. It's like you all have been going in reverse gear and suddenly you're coming to a forward gear. It's not a shift of gear, a shift of direction from a worldly momentum, from a terrestrial momentum to come into the transcendental momentum. It's not easy. You got to make that a paradigm shift. And it's not easy to make that shift. So it's just that 15 minutes of buffer you have just to attune, and not just to some kind of music. It is the highest of classical music. So these songs have been chosen with great care, because these are the songs, whether be it instrumental, whether be it classical songs, or whether be it bhajans. It's not something of a personal taste. It's something which we have picked up and collected over the years. So some of you may have heard this, but it's something very, very important. Now, why I mention in particular to this is because we are constantly talking about how you need to conquer your mind, how you need to contain your mind, how you need to control your mind. So unless and until you provide for it a conducive atmosphere, it's not possible to gain a mastery over your mind. It just needs an avenue where it gets distracted, it presents itself a challenge. Okay, so it will indeed be a great help. So if I were you, class for you all starts at 11:15, not at 11:30. All right, 11:15 you come in, sit through the music, cut off the world, switch off your phones. You're not available for the world for the next hour and a half. All right, we'll take up verse 15. Yunjannevam sadatmanam yogi niyatamanasah shantim nirvana paramam matstham sthamadhigacchati. Yunjannevam sadatmanam yogi niyatamanasah shantim nirvana paramam matstham sthamadhigacchati. Evam means thus. When you use the word thus, it's sort of implying an elaborate preparation or elaborate argument or elaborate efforts taken into something. It's more of a concluding of a process. Thus, evam, constantly seeking union with the self. The yogi, with his mind controlled, attains peace, culminating in supreme bliss, which abides in me. Shantim nirvana paramam. Niyata manasaha. See, it is a certain fundamental principles we all should remember. I believe we are aware of it, but we should keep in mind that whenever the mind goes out into the world, it is said to be of an extroverted nature. But the same mind, when it doesn't rush out into the world, it is of an introverted nature. So a mind which is of an extroverted nature is invariably restless. It is the very nature of an extroverted mind to be agitated. But the moment the mind is introverted, it doesn't rush out into the world, it naturally remains more peaceful and calm. So meditation is the height of an introverted practice. If meditation is the height of an introverted practice, what it requires is a matured introverted mind, which keeps it, which makes it quiet, at peace, which makes it worthy or qualified for the highest spiritual sadhana, which is meditation, or even for a study of our nature. You need to have an introverted mind. Therefore, when he says, thus constantly seeking union with the self, which means you must have a mind which is so introverted, it doesn't rush into the world. You must have a certain love or a certain appreciation for this. As we say, the mind is compared to a fluid. In fact, the Atmabodha talks of the fluid milk vis-a-vis the solid yogurt. The fluid milk which runs helter-skelter is the immature mind. The milk, when it goes through the process of transformation, when the milk gets solidified into curd, it's a matured mind, introverted mind. A mind of that nature is fairly calm because of the root, which is the desires and the vasanas, which doesn't let it go in different directions. So constantly we are being told that you must seek union with the self, seek union with the self. Almost that statement has become stale to us, isn't it? Seeking union, seeking union. What is seeking union? We don't understand what that means. What it means is today you have a certain love for the world, isn't it? Certain things in the world you have love for. What are the things you have love for? It could be a family, it could be your money, it could be your business, it could be your name, it could be your car. You have a love for your car. Oh my God, look at the car. You have a love for it, so much love for it. If you have half the love you have for the world, you have for the self, believe me, you'll realize it. Even half the love you have for the world, if you have for the self, you got it. It's enough. If you love the truth, half you love the world, you have a very fair chance of realizing the self. That is what he means, seeking union with the self. Now we are seeking the world as an end in itself. And that is what the argument is. They're only saying, when they say seek the self, they're not saying to abandon the world. They're only saying seek it, but not as an end in itself. Seek it as a means. So the self should be the absolute means. Everything else is a path. It is not the end. It should not be the destination. There was a Swami who lived a life of a sannyasi. So he wore a rocker robe, who was a brahmachari, a young man, a smart-looking young man. He used to go door to door for bhiksha. He had actually living a life of a Swami or a saint, a young man. And there were people who used to give with joy. There were people who used to not even entertain him. They never used to even respond to him. He just knocked whatever came his way. He took anywhere. He lived he did continue his sadhana, whatever he needed for his survival. But he started noticing at a particular door, every other day when he went there, the lady was very generous. She gave more than substantial. So much so the Swami didn't have to go any other door because whatever he needed was more than sufficient. He's not like us, accumulating, aggrandizing. So he said, I have this much, it's enough for the day. It'll serve me for my lunch, and perhaps there's something else for supper. So enough. So he didn't bother to keep for tomorrow. He kept going through that ritual. He started taking note that that lady kept taking care of him. She was giving him more than he needed. And one day he knocked at the door and he asked, why are you doing this to me? She said, I've fallen in love with your eyes, she said. In a sense, it's poetic. She fell in love with that Swami. He didn't say anything that moment. He left. He quietly left. And next day when he came, as it were by appointment, he kept coming at the same hour. So the lady was waiting. Would he come? Would he come? She came, he came, knocked at the door, but she was shocked to see what happened. He had a bandage tied over his eyes, and he had actually plucked out his eyeballs and kept it in a bowl, and somehow managed to reach there and said, "Mother, you seem to have fallen in love with my eyes. These eyes have bewitched you. Please take it. Take what you want, but don't be a hindrance in my journey to the truth." The powerful message, however dear a thing can be to you, but the moment it proves an obstacle to your journey, to your way to realization, it must be removed forthwith. It must be put aside. It must pave way for my journey to get to the truth. He was not interested in anything else but the self. He didn't want anything to retard his progress. Now, do we look upon everything in our life in that spirit? That is what he means by seeking union with the self. That's why I said, now we are worshipping the world. We have fallen in love with the world. Half the love you have for your worldly possessions, your worldly things, if you have for the self, there's a fair chance you'll realize it. So the principle we got to function is, it must be ringing in our minds. Deal with the world as a means to an end. That is when you're seeking union with the self. You've got to deal with the world as a means to an end. And then is your mind focused on the self. That is when you are truly introverted. That is when your mind will be peaceful. These are all a chain of connection. We are all interconnected, interdependent. Have you got it? What interdependence? Gayatrima, can you repeat all the things I just said? I'm just ensuring you understood, you captured it right.
Our desire to the world, whatever we are having, that pulls us down. So, like, we'll have to be attuned to the whatever the attachment, even if 50% we are attuned to the self, we have a chance of self-realization.
What did I say thereafter?
We need to put aside whatever comes in our way for our reach the self higher goals. We should keep them aside.
Yes and no. I said a few things. What are the things I said? What did you say, Rajima? Any idea?
The world is only a means to the end. Understand that and move on in your spiritual journey. If you realize that you're attached, that will only hinder your spiritual growth.
You start off well and then you... First thing is, you must... Okay, yes, Tinkima, boliye.
So, Hari Om Guruji. So when we are introverted, not focused on the world outside, then the mind is peaceful and we can focus on the self.
All right. What I said was, when you relate to everything in the world as a means to an end, then I am introverted. Then my mind is peaceful. Then only I can really seek something beyond it. Seek the self, seek the higher. Repeat, when you seek something as a means to an end. When you're seeking something as an end in itself, it is being extroverted. You must understand that. The definition of extroversion is when you seek something in the world as an end in itself. Does that sentence make sense? When you seek something in the world as an end in itself, that means you're extroverted. That becomes the purpose of your life. That becomes the objective of your life. You keep worshipping it. You keep pursuing it. That becomes your goal of life. Anything outward, anything extroverted, anything external, anything worldly. But if I use everything in life as a means to an end, then I am introverted because I'm giving myself a possibility of conceiving something other than what I am caught up in, what I'm seeking. So the world is only a stepping stone. It's not the end. And that is when I'm introverted. Introverted is when I use the world as a via means to get to the higher, to seek something beyond it. So I'm not sold my personality to anything else. So I'm sorry, I'm not for sale. You can't purchase me with your materiality. You can't purchase me with your emotions. You can't purchase me with your knowledge. You can't purchase me with your service. I'm only available for the self. I want you tell to yourself, I'm available the rest of my life, the rest of the time is clearly dedicated to get to the self. Then whatever you need to do to get, you'll do it. Whatever you need to do. This is what he says when he says seeking union with the self. You can't directly seek because you can't conceive it. So anything that doesn't take you to the self, you say no to it. So that lady, don't be instrumental in my downfall. I'll have none at, as Christ said, I will have none at thy hands. Get thee behind me, Satan, he said that. I'll have nothing to do with it. That kind of an attitude. Sitaram is asking, I'm not clear. I hope you're clear, but you say, I'm not clear how to fall in love with the self. I can understand removing attachment. How does one fall in love with something which I can't see? That's why I said, you start seeing something beyond what you're seeing. Hopefully you'll hit the self one day. As an employee who is just working for his salary, who is just working to feed himself and his family, would you say, man, why don't you enjoy your work, man? Why are you so much interested in the money and the perks and benefits? Enjoy your work. You will get rewards. You will be appreciated. You will get everything. But first, enjoy your work. Looks like you're just hopping from company to company because some company gives you a better job. You ditch this company, go for a better job in the name of evolution, in the name of growth. I must progress. In the name of progression, you're ungrateful to the organization. I know people who are very clear. Some of you are, you said, these days it doesn't work. So you'll tell him that, look, perhaps, can you not think in the interest of the organization? So is that not beyond just working for a salary? Exactly the same way you keep raising the bar, you keep taking it to a higher level. So all your life, just thinking about yourself, I and mine. So keep envisioning a larger cause. And someday See, you can only start with purifying your impurities. The impurities within are your own selfishness and your own imperfections, your attachments, your desires, your cravings, that which you're clinging on to. So when you get rid of impurities, naturally your thoughts get elevated. So that's the only way. Ultimately, one day you'll be able to envision what self-realization is. Now, when I started my journey, I first heard this concept of realization. I didn't know what it meant. For a long time, I didn't know what it meant until you start getting grounded in the knowledge. As you start marching towards your own self-improvement, self-purification, self-development, self-betterment, suddenly the concept starts revealing to you. These truths start unfolding themselves and they start appealing to you. And now you see self-realization as clearly as I see you, as clearly as you see me, as clearly, as vividly I see it. Are you okay, Sitaramji? Yes, Hariji.
Okay, I'm a bit confused when you are telling aim in the worldly action, we should not treat whatever we are getting as an end in itself. In chapter 4, we studied that we have to treat everything, whatever we are doing, to treat that as an end in itself, so that we stop lingering with the experience.
No. There's a different concept.
Okay. Can you please?
Okay. No, see, in the 4th chapter, you're referring of the concept of yajna.
Yeah.
I think where he talks about ending perception with perception.
Yeah.
That is different to treating the world as an end in itself or a means to an end. Okay. Even though the terminology is the same. See, ending perception with perception means do not linger.
Yeah.
Do not allow the mind to wander. Just live in the present moment. So ending perception with perception means be here, be now, in the moment.
Okay.
So your mind is where you are, not in the past experiences. It's not wandering. That is different to when you say relate with the world, not an end in itself. When you say in a simple, familiar example, we all need food to eat, to live. Sorry, you need to eat food to live. But there are people who live only to eat. When you live only to eat, it becomes an end in itself. We all need resources, money to live, but you don't live just to amass wealth. We need a family to live, but you don't live only for the sake of family. You need a social life, but you don't live only to socialize. We all need to travel to explore the world, but you don't live only to travel outward and not know what the inward journey is. So everything in life has a place, whether be it travel, whether be it family, whether be it money, whether be it social life, whether anything in life has a specific role. But when you start treating it as if it is the very purpose of life, that means it is an end in itself. But if I treat family as a means, yes, if I choose to have a life of a family, the Shastras have no objection to it. They don't say you should not be a grihastha. Where is it said you should not be a grihastha? No, you can live. In fact, they say this knowledge is more meant for grihasthas than a person living in an ashram, living a life of isolation. What challenges a sannyasi would have? Tell him to live a life of marriage, then he'll know what it is challenge. You want to know what I go through, come home and see. The reality I know. It proves, because look at the smile on the face of Vijaya. She knows what the reality is, what my state is. Every now and then I keep getting prasadam. Prasadam is blessings.
It's only a path.
Correct. I only look at it. I'm saying it is sadhana. It is sadhana. So means to an end. The end is the goal of realization.
Okay.
That's sense of it. Okay. It's not easy. It's not easy when I say this, to treat everything in the world as a means. If anyone, including me, we are able to conceive it, then you are truly conceived self-realization. Otherwise, we all have got stuck somewhere in the ladder. Somewhere we got stuck. It's very subjective. All right. Let's move on. 16. Natyashnatastu yogosti nachaikantamanashnataha nachati swapnashilasya jagrato chaiva charjuna. Natyashnatastu yogosti nachaikantamanashnataha nachati swapnashilasya jagrato chaiva charjuna. Verily, yoga is not for him. This is what I said, means to an end in itself. Is not for him who eats too much or does not eat at all, nor for him who sleeps too much or is awake. Arjuna. We have done this text. We have given a reference to this verse. So if it sounds familiar, here is the reference. Here is the context. Now, why should he be talking of this in meditation? He's talking everything other than meditation in the chapter of meditation. Either he is gone off rails or the current gurus have gone off rails. No gurus today will talk of all this. They plunge into meditation, teaching meditation. Here, almost we've gone into the quarter chapter. He has not yet spoken about the nuances of meditation. He's not even talking about it. He will not talk about it. He will talk, but the essential is this. So he gives disciplines for practicing yoga. He says eating and sleeping. These are the two terms he uses. Now you got to understand what they convey. Eating, who doesn't eat too much or eat too little. The word eating means it is your concentration of contact with the world. And you got to make sense of it. Eating means a concentration of contact with the world, and sleeping suggests the duration of contact with the world. One is the concentration of contact, other is the duration. So if you take the first aspect, let's unfold and see what it means. When you say eating too much or eating too little, when you say eating too much is you are sort of feasting. Eating too little means you are fasting. Oh, avaldana. So simple. It is feasting or fasting. What is the difficulty understanding? Now, what does feasting mean? Ushama, what does feasting in philosophical terms mean?
Indulgence.
I will ask, tell Ramji, I'll ask him.
It's
Tell him I could hear him.
Actually, he's sitting in the other room, Guruji. I didn't make any sign towards him or anything. He's just passing on the answer to me.
No, no. I know you. I'm telling he is not following the rules. I'm only blaming
Yeah.
Ramji, not you.
It's indulging in anything without control, absolute control.
Indulgence. Now, what does it convey? What is the philosophical term we use? What's the best way to understand that?
It's extrovertedness, more of extrovertedness.
Extrovertedness. Okay. What's another word? Anybody? Any other? What does it convey? Feasting, extrovertedness. Padminima says bhogi. It is a bhogi. In fact, you call such people as a rajasic. Jayama has rightly said, one who leads a life of extrovertedness is a rajasic life. So one who eats too much of the world is a rajasic person. He says rajasic person is not qualified for yoga. Yoga is only for those who eat not too much, not too little. You can't eat too much of the world. Now, eating is not only through Vasantama. How do you eat the world?
How do you eat the world?
It may be very, the language may be forgiven, but the answer is very philosophical.
When you rebel, you're deeply involved in the world.
Now, how do you eat?
You
How do you,
experience the
Ama, eating of the world means you eat sight through the eyes,
all through the
sound
sense
through
organs.
all through the sense organs. How else you eat the world? The various emotions through the mind, the various thoughts and ideas are the food for the intellect, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, eating too much of that means what?
Indulging.
When you go overboard with it. So all of these stimuli, you are excessive contact. At the emotional level, eating too much means what?
You're getting too attached.
Correct. Emotional level, eating too much means if you're attached to the world. Eating too much at the intellectual levels means what? Okay, Vasantama, hold on. Let me ask Ashama. Asha ji, boliye.
Sorry.
Eating, नहीं सॉरी मैं तो क्वेश्चन ही पूछा नहीं, आप पहले सॉरी बोल रहे हैं आप. हाँ माँ. Eating too much at the intellectual level means what?
Thinking too much, analyzing too much on it, on the subject in hand.
So you think that is wrong? So what we are doing is 1 hour is very wrong, isn't it? Too much of thinking going on. So you're telling Guruji, please let's not think so much. Too much rationalizing going on. एक दो भजन कर लेंगे ना, उसमें क्या है? You feel so? See, eating too much at the intellectual level is acquiring information without allowing the process of assimilation or digestion of knowledge. So mere ideas, acquiring mere information without understanding without thinking, without rationalizing, is too much of eating at the intellectual level. So you become very scholarly. You become a Vedantic Pandit. Like this morning, somebody came to me and the badminton court this morning, an elderly person came to me. He said, I keep hearing everybody keeps calling a Guruji here. And I've asked, what do you do? And they tell you teach Gita. I said, yes, I teach Gita. Almost in mid of the game, he came in. I'm in the midst of the game, and he's coming and asking me, do you teach Gita? I said, yes, Gita. And he said, I also teach Gita. I said, very nice to know, sir. I have been learning Gita from a very young age. In fact, I'm happy to tell you, I have by hearted most of the Gita. Oh, so nice to note. So what has he done? He has mugged up the information. Chanting. You can chant. It's just knowledge. Whether I'm not saying he doesn't have wisdom, please, but just having the information is too much of it. Those who eat too little, Ramji, Ushama, no help, huh? From this side, no help going that side.
Namaste, Guruji.
Energy, you are not following the rules and regulations set.
What is that?
You already violated one of them. Harish ji will give you a detailed list after the class.
Okay.
Right. So when he says who does not eat at all, refers to what, sir?
Who is not on the outside world through distillation of knowledge from what you see in the world. So in the first case, it is too much of information without converting it into knowledge. In the second case, you are neglecting even what is the source of knowledge available around you and thinking that you know everything. Perhaps. I mean, this is just my guess. Yeah.
So a person, I think there's a little disruption in your voice, but I did get to a large extent what you are saying. So the opposite of rajas is one who fasts, means who doesn't contact enough of the world, who doesn't eat the world. So the extreme thing is tamas. Tamasic state at the, now can you explain tamas at the mental level? Intellectual level, you said they're ignorance. They're quite comfortable in not acquiring, not enhancing their knowledge or wisdom quotient. They don't read at all as such. Too much is read and no digestion. As Hariji would say, length of study vis-a-vis no study at all. Correct? Many people go through volumes of literature. They do the length of study. That is eating too much. Not studying at all is eating too little. Now, can you convey the same thing at the mental level? Because eating too much, as you noted, at the mental level is getting attached.
Yeah.
Now, eating too little at the mental level means what?
Means you are not having enough attachment that is needed also. I mean, what we are saying is that we should get rid of all attachments. But at the same time, you have to also have some level of ownership of some of the things that help you in reaching the higher goals in life.
But we're not even talking of higher goals, but we're talking of dealing with emotions. So there are a set of people, he says, who don't eat too much of emotions. Now, what do we mean by that? Don't eat too much of emotion means? We're not talking of higher goals of life.
Emotionally, they become very hard in the sense that they don't use their emotions effectively for creating relationships.
Correct. So they become sort of stone-hearted, they become reckless, they become heedless, they become indifferent to the world. That's the tamasic state, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we are only talking it applicable at all levels, whether at the senses level, at all the levels of eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin, at the mental, intellectual level, where you're not able to moderate. So it's very easy to go to the extremities at any of these levels. Either you give too much love or you give no love at all. Either you eat too much of the world or don't eat at all. Either you read too much without understanding or don't read at all. He says yoga is not meant for that type of person. This suggests concentration of contact with the world. And then sleeping, he says, the duration of contact with the world. Now, the duration of contact, again, he says, is not for one who is too much awake. Too much awake is what? Hariji? A person who is not sleeping enough is awake too much. What does it mean?
It's a rajasic person who's always living in the world, or completely enveloped by or attached to the world, indulging in the world.
It is the sleeping refers to the duration of contact. The duration means there's an overuse of your equipments. The BMI, the body, mind, intellect, there's an overuse of it, which is rajas, isn't it? And a person who is sleeping too little is rajas. Sleeping too much is underusing of his equipments, tamas. Now you got to bring in these two: concentration of contact and duration of contact. Are we right, Harishji? Both these two? Now, what is the ideal duration of contact? So, ideal duration is talking of sattva. Rajas and tamas are not ideal. And every individual has got a quotient of sattva, rajas, tamas in us, isn't it? Now, how many hours you must be awake? In that waking hours, how much time you must spend in sattva? How much time you must spend in rajas? How much time in tamas? Any idea? Sitaramji, if you want to try to quantify this.
It's to say the least difficult, but I would say, for example, look at the sleep duration, for example. Now, I would say for a normal healthy person, you require 8 hours of sleep. So anything which is more or less than that, if it is more than that, say instead of 8 hours, sleeping, say 12 hours, I would say that will fall into the tamasic area. If it is going to be less than 8 hours, and say only sleeping for 3 to 4 hours and indulging in watching movies, etc., and indulging in the world per se, that would be the rajasic state. So what is so the balance, the 8 hours which is required for bodily functions to be done properly could be the sattvic stage, I would say. Of course, here also what matters is not just the duration of the sleep, but also the timing of the sleep. You need to, you cannot have the 8 hours during the course of the day, but you'd like to have it, say between, so you get up in the morning at 4 o'clock or during a Brahma Muhurtam time, and then indulge in meditation. So that would be the sattvic stage of the 8 hours of sleep during the particular night time till say 4 o'clock in the morning. I would quantify like that.
Correct. So as I said, so the duration of the sleep and at what time you fall in line with the plan and scheme of nature.
That's it.
No? So what we have said is tamas is after sunset till sunrise, or till not even sunrise, before 4 a.m. From sunset to sun. So let's say from 6:30, 7 o'clock till 4 o'clock is your tamasic hour.
Yeah.
Then how many hours? From 7 to 4?
7 to 4 is 5 plus 4, 9 hours.
9 hours. So try to not be awake as many hours as possible. No, you obviously can't be sleeping at 7 o'clock, but you don't keep awake as much as possible in the tamasic hour. So let's say you end your day by 8:39. You call it, I'm done for the day. So let's say from 9 to 4, you are giving yourself X number of hours. The Brahma Muhurtam Sattvic hour is early hours, as we all know, 4 onwards till sunrise. And sunrise to sunset is the Rajas.
Yeah.
So now, why are we talking of these 3 gunas? Is spiritual growth is measured with annihilating tamas, stifling tamas. You must try to stifle areas of tamas. Whatever your areas, you must face it head on and say, I'm going to conquer it. I will not feed it. Areas of tamas must be stifled. Sustain rajas, enhance sattva. This is how you must deal with these 3 gunas, which manifest at different times of the day. You like it or not, this is how it is. I repeat, you stifle tamas, you sustain rajas, and you enhance sattva. This is the spiritual sadhana. And if you do this, you will automatically be qualified for yoga. Now, why should you sustain rajas? Rajas is action. You got to have your action going. And wherever the action is going, which is your swadharma, you go and do whatever your dharma compels you to do. Now, when you are compelling, you're influencing the wisdom from sattva to come and give you a direction, isn't it? A rajasic person is recklessly acting with a lot of anxiety, attachment, fear. You're not acting with mental accidents. You're trying to bring a charm of your wisdom into your work. You're trying to bring dexterity. You're trying to bring a sense of precision, a sense of perfection, a sense of uprightness to your work. All these are qualities of sattva. So when you are enhancing sattva, the sattva starts reflecting in the course of action also. So it's not a restless or a reckless actions. It is an action with a clear purpose. So through the day, you're acting, but your actions are resonating of the thoughts you have instilled because you're instilling sattva. Now we are given an example. Let's say the 3 gardens there. One is a tulip garden. Tulip garden is a sattvic garden. Then there is a fruit garden, the rajasic garden. The vegetable garden is tamasic garden, just discussion's sake. You're not providing enough nutrients, you're not giving enough sunshine, you're not giving enough water, you're not taking care of the tulip garden. You're taking care of sort of the fruit garden, but all the nourishments you're giving to the vegetable garden. So which one will flourish? Padmanima, which will flourish?
Because we are nourishing the vegetable garden, it should
flourish.
Yeah, no, you have not been following what I'm saying, ma. What is flourishing? Oh, you're making me angry now. What is flourishing?
What we nourish.
What are you nourishing?
Is tulip?
No, no, no. Don't
No,
change your answer. You are nourishing the tamasic garden, which is the vegetable garden.
yeah, that's what I said. No,
No, I'm just.
You are nourishing the vegetable garden because you need more of vegetables.
I don't take literally the example. Now, tulip, I'm going to put it in my ears. I just take an example. If you want any insight of tulips, there's someone who can give you a little insight. Who is that? No, I'm just giving an analogy. Don't take it literally. Are you all able to hear me?
Yeah.
So,
now,
okay. So you need to be very clear as to where you are giving your thoughts and resources, where you're investing. So when you invest in sattva rises, rajas sustains because inaction is death, and tamas stifles. So as you keep doing day in and day out, the result of that is your sattvic quotient increases, rajas and tamas slowly starts dropping. And then he says, this fits in. Sattva is a state of moderation of your concentration of contact, is a balance where you have the duration of contact. So ideally, there's nothing ideal, but I'm just saying you should have 8 hours of sattva, 9 hours of rajas, 7 hours of tamas. Means give yourself that much rest, plus minus here and there. 7, 8 hours of sleep through the day. The rest of the time you are acting, and considerable 7, 8 hours you're studying or writing or lecturing or involved in a puja or a ritual or some kind of activity which is invoking the sattvic sattva in you. 8 hours. So 8, 9, 7. Hariji, does it add up to 24 or 25? 24. Okay. If it adds up 25, minus panada all that. Add it to sattva. I'm very poor at mathematics. So all you need to do is this. Therefore, he says, this yoga is only meant for a sattvic person. Now, you got to ask yourself, what is the question you got to ask yourself? Jayama, what's the question you got to ask yourself? Oh, I don't want to ask any question, Guruji. I'm asking you what you should ask yourself.
Am I really allocating the right amount of time to sattva, rajas, and tamas?
One question, yes.
And,
okay, yes, go ahead.
And if it's not in the right proportion, how I can work on increasing the sattva and stifling the tamas and balancing the rajas.
And also to find out to what extent you are sattvic. Do you know your current constitution? Do you know what extent is your sattvic quotient, rajasic quotient, tamasic quotient? Do you know that? You should know. First thing you start doing is examining a self-introspection of trying to examine and find out what is my constitution, how much of sattva is there in me.
Yes, Guruji.
How much of tamas, how much of rajas is there in me? You got to find out. Yes, Hariji. Correct. Now, how do you find out how much of Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva is there in you? Rajima, how do you find out how much of Sattva is there in you?
See how many hours you're spending in each category.
No, you can be spending. I know people who get up at 4 o'clock and they watch Facebook.
Watch your thoughts, where they are, where your mind is, where your intellect is, Guruji. That's what I mean.
Okay.
Whether it is going outward into the world or it's going inward, where introverted or extroverted.
It's a very broad way of defining. I can be an introverted person, but how do I know how sattvic I am? How do you know what is your sattvic quotient? You see, you may be familiar, but the why I'm asking is we need to have a clear diagnosis. Otherwise, you'll not have a clear outcome. How do I find out how much sattva I have? What, by questioning, we get clarity to the answer. That's what I'm trying to bring out. Just by saying how introverted you are, you will not know how much sattvic you are.
Watching the concentration and the duration of our contact with the world, Guruji, would that be enough?
That would be. Hello? Can you hear me?
Now I could.
I don't know. I seem to be getting this prompts that my internet connection is not stable. It just come and gone.
I can hear you.
But now it's okay, isn't it? Okay. Yes, Tinkima, boliye.
So Guruji, our gunas, will determine our behavior, our thoughts, our speech, everything, our feelings also. So by being aware and observing our thoughts and our speech and action, we get into habituated patterns of behavior and speech and thought, and we're not aware, we just go along with it. So the intellect has to be alert and strong to all the time check the mind, because the thought gives rise to the feeling, and that gives rise to the action, to the behavior, and to the speech. So that would help us. The intellect is strengthened, it checks the mind, and being aware and alert at every moment. So that comes with a lot of practice, with study, with doing what we need to do, but always that, as you had said in the last class about your focus is here, so that you remember that we are all doing what we need to, but this is the final thing that we have to focus on. So to start with, observing our thoughts, speech, behavior. And I don't know, somewhere every time for me at least, if I say something or I say it very in an irritable way, or I say, immediately that thought comes to me. That has started happening, not now, for a long time. But it only comes after the event. It must come before. That's the biggest struggle.
No. Very sweet. I think what you have said is very right. I will expand on this after I take in Sitaramji's views. He wants to say something. Hariji also wants to say. Sitaramji first, and then Hariji. I'll come back to what Tinkima has commented. Yes, Sitaramji, please.
What I would do is, there has to be some sort of a checklist on the basis which one decides how much of sattvic content one has. For example, I would say that, how much time we are spending in sleeping, number one. Number two, how much time we are spending in overeating, going beyond what is required to be eaten. Number three, how much time are we spending in reading about things which are which will take us more towards understanding these scriptures, etc. How much time you're spending in doing things for yourself and for doing for others. I think these simple checklists will tell us in a more simple fashion as to how much sattvic content one has. Because it's extremely difficult to, I feel, to keep on monitoring oneself on a minute-to-minute basis as to what I am doing. I think overall, I think it's easy to do this.
No, it is not. It's not something which you do on a daily basis or a quarterly basis. It is done.
Generally, one should take
stock of oneself once in 6 months. Once in 6 months, you evaluate where you stand. Have you evolved? Have you devolved? Has there been any changes? But you can only have a perspective only from where you stood.
Exactly, that's true. Ideally speaking, which is a habit which I had long back, but I've not done it, is to have a diary which you write on a daily basis, which makes it as simple as that to catalog through the course of the day what all you've done without getting into anything else. And over a period of time, one should be able to see some progress towards the more sattvic trends. I mean, if what one is doing is bearing some fruits, then that should happen.
Correct. You're right. You're right. Appreciate your inputs. Yes. Okay. Hariji?
It depends on the 3 R's. Reaction and response of the stimuli, from the external world. So whether I am sattvic or rajasic or tamasic depends on the type of response that I will be giving to each and every stimulus that I am getting from the external world. The more aggressive, the more rajasic responses means that the rajasic content in me is more. Whereas if my response is more sattvic, then my nature, my guna, sattvic guna proportion is more. So it all depends on how I react. That is the difference between a saint and a saint and a normal person. A saint reacts saintly because his sattvic guna, sattvic proportion is more in him.
You're right. Very true. That could be one of the ways. Perhaps we could come back to this discussion, but I would want to mention it. See, sattva, rajas, tamas are states of your mind. So it is very important for you to crystal clear, defined what is sattva, what is rajas, what's tamas. Because this state of mind reflects in everything that you do. So sattva is a state of mind which is unruffled. It is not agitated. As Hariji says, there is no guilt. It is calm. It is contented. It is equanimous. A matured mind is sattva. I don't want to be more synonyms. You can put all together, you can understand what sattvic state of mind is. Rajas is a state of mind which is ruffled by the world. A state of mental accidents where you're grumbling and complaining all the time, where you're dissatisfied, you're discontented, you're restless, you're sleepless, where you feel a sense of remorse or guilt. That is rajas. Tamas is a state of mind which is heedless, which is irresponsible, is sloth, lethargy, a state of mind which is procrastinating, a state of mind which is don't care, I'm not bothered attitude. In short, a state of mind which is in ignorance. Now put all that together. So each of it create a definition, create an understanding. And then please refer to the comment I've given in the chat. There's 7 aspects. 7 aspects starts with knowledge, action, actor, intellect, consistency, happiness, and renunciation. These are 7 ingredients which can be divided based on these 3 aspects of sattva, rajas, and tamas. So you should categorize, create a chart. You have top, you have 7 segments, which is knowledge, action, actor, etc. Sattva, rajas, tamas. So what is sattvic knowledge? Give yourself a small definition. You don't have to give it. In fact, the 18th chapter of the Gita spells it out. What is sattvic knowledge? What's rajasic knowledge? What's tamasic knowledge? So take a note of it. What is sattvic action, rajasic action, tamasic action? Sattvic happiness, rajasic happiness, tamasic happiness. So when you do this chart and divide your personality based on these gunas, the 7 segments, and the proportion of all the sattva, the entire rajas, entire tamas, that's your quotient. So when you give yourself sattvic knowledge, you got to evaluate yourself. How much of sattvic knowledge have I got? How much of rajasic happiness am I seeking? So this is a lot of time is required by you all to invest into preparing this chart. So you have a yardstick. This is the yardstick given in the Shastras and the Gita. Now, once you have this yardstick, you come to a conclusion. This is what my sattvic quotient is. And you revisit this perhaps every 6 months. So keep that last evaluated sheet with yourself and revisit it so that you know how far have I evolved. But you need to be extremely objective when you do this because you are assessing yourself. You can't be prejudiced. Now, can you be biased? You can't, correct. You can't be biased. You got to be very neutral. But this is the authoritative way how you can go about it. But broadly, you can know by even measuring the state of your mind, which reflects in everything, all this, as I've said. But even just broadly knowing, you will be able to know how much of sattva, rajas, and tamas. But it's essential, you know. So we all should embark on this little journey. The references to these 7 segments with the reference of the 18th chapter will come your way through the satsang group. So which verse to go and refer so that you have an idea as to where to look for. Otherwise, you'll be searching in the 18th chapter, you will not know. So I'll give you that exact reference to the verses. For those 21 verses, you will have a bird's eye view of what the entire segment is talking about. Okay? We'll come back. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om.